The Granary building, as people call it, is getting a new lease on life. Many Bellingham residents have only known it to be an eyesore, but the building survived redevelopment of the waterfront, which has been slow going since Georgia Pacific pulled out of the area, letting Bellingham clean up the mess of what was left over. Between 1999 and 2007, Georgia Pacific gradually shut down its chlorine plant, its log processing and paper mill, and then finally its tissue paper mill. Georgia Pacific never had much of a plan for the Granary building, a vestige of the golden years of Washington Cooperative's Egg and Poultry Association. Whatcom County archivist Jeff Jewell helps tell the story.
It was a statewide organization that helped farmers buy collectively and to seek out markets together, which led to Washington State being one of the biggest producers of poultry, chicken meat, and eggs. Whatcom County, in that mix, was one of the most productive of counties, really on a national level. After the Whatcom Creek waterway was dredged in 1913, for the first time, really, you could bring boats in close to shore, all the way up to Rotor. Prior to that, there had been tide flats, which prevented boats from getting too close to shore. A large warehouse was built on Quackenbush Dock, which is now Central Avenue, and you could hold feed for chickens. In 1922, the cooperative built a large concrete warehouse, tore down the old wooden warehouse in 1928 and 1929. They built the big Granary building, as they call it now, as their main holding facility for feed and for bedding materials for chickens. They also apparently did some candling there and various processing of chickens, but they had 3 other facilities on the Bellingham Waterfront where they slaughtered chickens, made chicken soup. Access to the water was important for shipping both ways, incoming supplies and outgoing materials, and also its proximity to the train line. So let's say you bring in bedding material either by ship or by truck. You can hold it in the warehouse. The Granary building can hold it there until then the next Great Northern train, which you then would load, and it could take it to Ferndale and Blaine. Or you could transfer on Railroad Avenue and send it up to Linden and Sumas and even further east in the county. And it worked vice versa. So you could bring stuff in from the county, let's say a big load of eggs, and you could bring them in by train, hold them in the warehouse, put them on a boat, and ship them out. So that Granary building was located in a very strategic location. Trucks over time became more and more important. Washington Cooperative Egg and Poultry Association had a large fleet of, 30 trucks that traversed the county. So the waterway and that part of the waterfront after World War II became dominated by the pulp mill. That started in 1925, Pacific Coast Paper Mills, which was converting large rolls of tissue into consumer-sized rolls. Facial tissue, yada yada. 1928, they were joined by a pulp mill. Those two companies eventually just kind of morphed together as Puget Sound Pulp and Timber. Waterfront becomes completely dominated by that process. So from its early beginnings, embryonic beginnings in the 20s, it just grew and grew and grew. And all through the 30s, while the country's in a major depression, that pulp mill is expanding. They came in control of the Granary building because the co-op moved on.
In 1961, the building was looking for a new owner, until Georgia Pacific arrived on the scene 2 years later, when it also bought Puget Sound Pulp and Timber. The Granary building was used for storage until the end of the 1970s, when Georgia Pacific boarded it up. This 1973 photo shows pylons left over after the old Central Avenue wooden planks were partially replaced with concrete blocks. This work was done back in 1958. In this photo, you can see the Citizens Dock on the Whatcom Creek waterway, which collapsed in 1986. It was removed by the city since it wasn't really in use anymore.
Towards the end of Georgia Pacific's time here, pulp mill closed in 2001. Tissue mill continued, and they built a giant warehouse on the waterfront, and there was just a constant all-day parade of trucks going back and forth between the warehouse and the mill. And to do that, you come out of the mill, you have to take a right onto Central, take a left onto Rotor, and then coming back, repeat, take a right off of Roeder onto Central, take a left onto Old Chestnut Street. And they thought, oh, well, if we just remove the Granary building, we can run a diagonal truck route and won't have to make all these difficult turns all day. So their plan was to tear down the Granary building, and enough citizens got wind of this plan that they protested and said, oh, God, no, you can't do that. Save the building, save the building. And so there was a concerted effort by concerned citizens to save the building. GP relented, okay, I think because they knew they were leaving anyway. And after 2007, that was the end of it.
The ivy heart, which had grown on the side of the building, became the poster child for the Save the Granary building movement. Eventually, Harcourt, the company redeveloping the waterfront, remodeled the Granary, keeping some of the old building's historic elements in place, while preparing the building for new business. The ivy heart was remade a trellis for a wisteria plant. Its first tenant is a yoga studio and massage spa on the 3rd floor. Arboretum Coffee, Everson-based good-to-go meat pies, and a meadery called Art of 'Em are all slated to set up shop in the Granary building soon.